Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family and explorers of consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, live here on the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We're also going live on YouTube and Twitch right now, and one of these days I'll figure out how to get on Rumble. But I hadn't had time to today. So tonight we're going to go over the Lucifer stuff that we went over yesterday, and like why we left off while we were reading Wes Penre's material, talking about why both Jesus and Lucifer call themselves the morning star. Before this happened, though, I have to say real quick, a sad thing just happened. I've had these headphones, as you can see, they're worn for years doing radio. Like, look how worn they are. I've gotten pads, like 4 different pads. I don't know how many times I've gotten different pads for these things. But today, these Sony, I can tell you, these are some of the best headphones you'll ever get, if you can find them, which is the dynamic stereo headphones, the MDR V6s. Broke. The damn things just broke off. And I'm not talking about, it's not fixable. It's gone. I'm so sad. Like, these are very sentimental to me. And you couldn't fix this if God told you to. I don't know how this happened, but it lasted for years. So we're going to retire these things and hopefully get some new ones. I've got the cheap headphones on, so I can't really hear how good things are. But people have been using these since the 70s, man, in radio. This very pair of headphones right here. Retired. Gone. Okay. Well, maybe we'll get another pair. But I want to thank, who was it that someone bought 3 Tatwa decks. I think it was last night. So I figured I'll go over that real quick. So there's this, because they're print to order, so it takes a while to get them shipped to you. But this is cool because we're going to do some trippy conscious exploration with this. Now, first let me tell you about this thing, all right? In the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, when you went through the elemental grades, you would learn how to scry. So they would teach you how to scry through these tattwa cards, right? And I can give you an example of one right here. Here's one, right? So this is known as Prithivi, which is earth. And there's different versions where there's a white background and a black background. It looks simple enough, right? But it's the flashing colors that they used to get you to explore with your consciousness, right? So you would stare at these cards, which is really cool. It does this like a mind trick thing. So you stare at these cards and you don't blink, basically, until you'll start to see a flash around the edges of it. You can probably do it with a digital download, but it's much easier if you got like candles in a card. And so you would stare at these cards until the outlines begin to flash. And then what would happen is you would move your mind's eye through the geometric shape. And then it's kind of like a active imagination. You'd start to record whatever experience you had, right? Well, then you have like all of the different, I didn't put all the cards up here, but you have all the different, like, so if this is Earth or Prithivi, right? You could have a black background or a white background or a flashing background like this one. And then you could have one that would also have what would be known as, like, let's say the seed of water or the seed of Apis in Earth. And it would have a little crescent moon inside that square. And if you stared at it long enough, yeah, the energy from the eclipse broke my headphones for sure. So if you stared at it long enough, it would begin to flash. And then when you shut your eyes, like in this case, if you stared at this one long enough, it would begin to flash. And then you would shut your eyes, and then it would come to be a purple square in your closed eye. So there's different methods that they use to build their clairvoyant powers, right? So I'll show you what, I don't have like pictures of all the cards, but this is just an example. So when you became an adept, they had this thing called the vault. So first, in the first orders, you would work your way through the temples, right? And go through the elements and stuff like that. And then when you became an adept, you would enter what was called the vault of the adepti. Now this is the walls from the vault of the adepti. I think this is the Were Ra temple here. Did you guys even see that earth card? Let me make sure you saw that first, because I don't think I transitioned. There you go. So first, that's like a basic tattwa scrying card of earth right there with a flashing background. Once you got all of your all this stuff down, then they would teach you how to do this stuff in the vault. So you would sit in this vault, and each of these walls corresponded with a planet, and all of the shapes and all of the glyphs or the symbols corresponded with certain things that have to do with that planetary wall. And so they were teaching these adepts inside this vault how to astral travel by initiating a doorway with flashing colors. So when you get the tattwa cards, the tattwa cards in the elemental side of things, that starts teaching you how to do that, right? So we're going to do that. And whoever that was, I think it was Barefoot Hippies that ordered 3 decks from the Fringe FM. We're all going to do this stuff together. I can't promise you that you're going to like develop your clairvoyant abilities, but this is what people like Israel Regardie, Dion Fortune, all of the original Golden Dawn magicians used to develop their clairvoyance. They made their own tarot decks and they made their own tattwa cards. So this is like a virtual image of the vault of the adepts right here. So you wouldn't even get to the vault or be able to go into this vault, do your meditations and rituals, and then scry through any of these images until you were past all of the elemental grades. And if you read Liam Thomas Christopher's book, he wants you to spend at least like 6 months in each grade, right? So you learn everything about the element. I don't think he really has the tattwa cards in his system, but a lot of people do. It's pretty trippy. What's his name? I had him on the show. Jason Augustus Newcomb sells a vault that you could actually blow up. It's like a blow up tent, and it has all of the planetary walls on the vault. So, yeah. So you start out, when you're practicing your elements, you just start out with tattwa cards, basically, like this is Earth. And so I have the flashing deck available, but I'm also making the decks that have the white background and the black background, just in case you don't like the flashing background. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to explore practically our consciousness with this stuff. It's a practical way to do it. And if it builds your clairvoyance up, then hell yeah, right? Okay, so let's get back into this, to where we were at yesterday. What's up, Brian? What's up, Word Salad? And who else is here? Scruffy Bear. I got some pictures I want to show you guys of some more people in their t-shirts, and then like Michael with his turkey. But I'll do that later in the show. Michael with his turkey and during the eclipse. So we were talking about how Lucifer and both Jesus were called the morning star, right? So in Revelations 22:16, he says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I'm the root and offspring of David and the bright and morning star. So in this book, he says, who is known as the morning star? Lucifer and Jesus. In this passage comes the first extension of God, Lucifer, his firstborn, also known as Marduk. And he's putting that as a fact. We don't know that's a fact, that it's also Marduk, but he put that in here. So these were just a few excerpts from the book of Revelation, but I hope it gives the reader something to ponder over. The book of Revelation tells us what might come, but from Lucifer's viewpoint. Some of the verses are planned to happen, and we could perhaps call it destiny. Lucifer knows Orion's plan, and I would suggest mostly because of Jesus' teachings, and the book of Revelation was relayed to John the Divine after the time of Jesus. So I figured we'd look this up. So I did a little research here. And there's a big argument about all this stuff, right? So many Christians believe that the devil, or Satan, and Lucifer are three names for the same person. This is probably distracting, me having this Tatua card up here, huh? Let me put the vault up here. Y'all gonna start staring at it and having clairvoyant visions, right? Which one do I need to... Yeah, let's do this one. Okay. So it really comes down to, number one, do you believe that these are actual figures, actual beings? Do you believe that they're egregoric beings based on symbols and symbology and things like that? Or do you believe it's all bullshit? Basically, that's your three choices. But when we get down to where both Lucifer and Jesus have been called the morning star, we have to get down to the facts. First and foremost, the only time Lucifer was ever even mentioned in the Bible was in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah, when he was called the morning star. That's the only time he was ever called the morning star. It was Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 through 14. It says, what does it say? I don't even have it up here. It says something about how, O Lucifer, have thou fallen, something like that. Lucifer, son of the morning. So just once. You don't see it anymore after that. Okay? And then when we get into the roots of it, let's see, where did Revelation? So Revelations, I had this, okay. So they believe, first and foremost, we have to also, now that we know that, we have to look at the book of Revelations, right? So when did this book get added to the canon? Not that it even matters. For some of us that are exploring things consciously, it doesn't matter. But for orthodoxy people and people that want to know the history and people that are like deep into theology, this kind of stuff matters. What's up, Jess? So the book of Revelation was actually added to the Bible in the late 1st or early 2nd century. It was the very last book to be accepted into the biblical canon, and even at the present day, some Nestorian churches reject it outright. So while most scholars lean towards a later date, that would put the writing of Revelation somewhere close to right around 100 or so AD. Okay, so we know it's a book that got added onto the canon just like all the other books, and it was the very last one, and there's some churches that don't even say it's real. Just like Freemasons, right? So the big argument is that we're back to the Christ and Lucifer and the morning star thing. So if Lucifer isn't Satan, then where do we get the word Lucifer from? Not saying he's not bad, okay? But if he's not Satan per se, we got to figure out how they came to be the same person. So Lucifer has been called like, I'm sure I'm scaring people every time I say Lucifer, but he's been called an archangel by a lot of people, like Abaddon or the angel of death. But it may not even be a person at all. So, but there are millions of people that believe that Lucifer is the devil. So we have to look back at Satan in the Bible and Lucifer in history to separate the difference, right? So according to centuries of orthodoxy and Christian writing, Lucifer is Satan. But if you, let's take Dante. I like Dante. Take Dante, for example, who wrote this Journey Through Hell, or the Inferno. So when he reaches the lowest pits of hell, he meets the devil. In his writing, Dante uses 4 names for these massive winged creatures who rule hell. He calls it the devil, Satan, Beelzebub, and Lucifer. The 4 kings of hell, right? But it wasn't really, we didn't really know this kind of like stuff solidly till early 14th century. And that is when Dante wrote the Inferno. So what I'm trying to tell you is, we didn't think that you have to really look into this, but we didn't really start calling Lucifer Satan until Dante's stuff came out. Then there was probably lots of talks about it, and there's arguments about it. But when Dante released this thing, that's when it became clear to everybody, right? What does that tell you about it? If you go to Christians always go to the Bible for everything, because the Bible is the ultimate rule of everything, right? So he was originally an angel. This is how the Christians look at it. He was originally, I misspelled that, an angel named Lucifer, but he broke from God's authority and was banished from heaven and cast out. And in Isaiah 14:12, it describes the fall. Here it is right here. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? So after he lost his position in heaven, he changed his name to Satan. That's the way Christians look at it, okay? So for centuries, Christians have argued that Lucifer disguised himself as a serpent to tempt Eve in the Garden of Eden, which there's no facts to point to that in Genesis whatsoever, okay? The serpent is actually just the serpent in Genesis. So the book of Revelation predicts that Lucifer will be tormented for 1,000 years after Christ's return. And for man's creation through the apocalypse, Lucifer will torment mankind as the enemy of God. Now, in Wes's book, he's saying that it's all the same thing, and Lucifer will come back and just torment the people that served him, the elite. But there's a problem here. Okay, so many biblical scholars argue that Lucifer isn't Satan at all. And they bring a lot of evidence to the table to show that Christians have mixed up the two for almost 1,000 years. So you have to ask yourself, could we get something wrong for 1,000 years? Are we capable of having something totally wrong and spreading a rumor that's not real for 1,000 years? Is humankind capable of that? You know the answer to that question, right? In Latin, Lucifer means the bringer of light. That's a pretty strange choice for the name of Satan, I would think. But Satan is called the Prince of Darkness. The Romans is where we got to look at the whole thing at. So the Romans didn't use Lucifer as a word for Satan. Instead, Lucifer simply just meant Venus. That was it. Venus as being one of the brightest stars in the sky. So Venus was called the morning star or light bringer. But how did that get into the Bible? Back to the Old Testament, where Lucifer first appeared, was originally written in Hebrew. The original text of Isaiah, the word is, it has lamed, lamed, hey, which is Hallel, or means the shining one. So if you go back to the Hebrew version of it, the original, it's Hallel, which just means the shining one. Latin translators read the word as morning star. So they took that word, the shining one, Hallel, and transferred it into the morning star. Now, this probably confused Roman readers since Lucifer was a Roman god at the time. In Roman mythology, Lucifer was called the light bearer, the equivalent of the Greek god Phosphorus or Eosphoros. The Romans saw Lucifer as a male god carrying a torch, symbolizing Venus's brightness at dawn. Roman poets described Lucifer as the herald of dawn, and Lucifer was often depicted as a shining star. Could all of this gotten really mixed up? Let's see. Now, there are other verses in the Bible that kind of put it together. We know Isaiah 14:12 is there. How have you fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn? You have been cut down to earth. You have weakened the nations, right? But in 2 Peter, so we have the prophetic word made more sure, to which you will probably get more confused, because it says this. Let me just read it in our translation after it's been translated 100 times. So we have the prophetic word made more sure, to which you will do well to pay attention as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star arises in your hearts. Job 38:7, when the morning stars sang together, all the sons of God shouted for joy. So far, the morning stars don't mean a damn thing evil. Let's keep going. Revelations 22:16, I, Jesus Christ, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright and morning star. Revelations 2:28, I will give him the morning star. And in Numbers, it's in Numbers too. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob. A scepter shall rise from Israel, and shall crush through the forehead of Moab, and tear down the sons of Sheth. So all we see as this morning star is something that rises in our hearts. It's a good thing. In Revelations, Jesus calls himself the morning star. And in Revelations 2:28, he says, I will give him or you or whoever becomes saved the morning star. Yet, if we go back to the Old Testament, which was if we go back to the Old Testament, which is where I think everything got mixed up. Because Hillel, that's what mixed it up. The Hebrew word Hillel, I'm probably saying that wrong. It's probably Hillel or something. I don't know. But it doesn't appear in the Latin version of the New Testament at all as a description for Jesus. Lucifer does appear in the Latin version of the New Testament as a description for Jesus. Jesus is called Lucifer, or the morning star, because he represents a new beginning. In short, the OG text of the Bible never used Lucifer to mean Satan. In fact, the word Lucifer was more closely associated with Jesus and good things than the devil in the Bible. Only in the Bible. So I was going to play the clip of Bill Cooper saying that it confused him too, but if the Old Testament reference to Lucifer doesn't mean Satan and the New Testament references to Lucifer meant Jesus, then how in the world, let's just ask ourselves this, how in the world did Lucifer become Satan? Now, I'm not Christian. I don't buy into any of this stuff, not fully, okay? So I'm only studying this from I guess you could say like a theological point of view. But I find it funny how we humans tend to muck everything up. So how in the world did this happen? This is how it happened. So the first references to Lucifer as Satan date to the 3rd century, after the New Testament had been in circulation for nearly 200 years. There's this guy called Henry Kelly, and he explained how the Latin word for light bearer was misinterpreted as Satan. And the ancient Hebrew in the book of Isaiah doesn't refer to Satan at all. According to this guy, Isaiah refers to a Babylonian king using the metaphor of Venus. Now we're getting somewhere kind of crazy. If we look at Wes's book, what does Wes say about this? Was Marduk spoke about in the Babylonian text? Yes, he was. And here's a guy that doesn't even know any of that shit and is verifying that. This is where Wes gets us thinking sometimes, right? So in the 3rd century, the early Christian theologian Origens came from the verse referred to Satan, which was the word origin or Origen, and it almost looks like Orion, but it's not. And Lucifer is said to have fallen from the heaven. This can't refer to a human being, so it must refer to Satan, right? Subsequent church fathers found this reasoning persuasive, and so did everyone who followed them. So basically how this came about is kind of like how the Babylonian Talmud and other religious texts came about. Certain things didn't make sense. So when it came to the things like the Talmud and stuff like that, you had a bunch of rabbis sitting at tables and arguing and yelling at each other about stuff until they finally came to an agreement, and then that's what doctrine was, right? The same thing happened here, except it wasn't really rabbis. It was the church fathers. Now, this word is spelled Origen. Okay. In the 3rd century, the early Christian theologian Origen claimed the verse referred to Satan. This was the first time it was ever claimed, okay? So the Origen's reasoning drew on Lucifer's classical connection to Venus. In one of his commentaries, Origen described Earth as the seat of war. These fucking flies don't even come around until I do the radio show. There's a witch out there mad at me somewhere. Is that the best you can do, is just get flies, break my headphones? Really? It's pretty weak. So, hey, where was I? Origen described Earth as the seat of war on which Lucifer, star of the morning, fell from heaven to be warred against and destroyed by Jesus. The astronomical understanding gradually faded, even in Origen's writings. And De Principiis, Origen linked the falling star in Isaiah with Jesus' New Testament words, "Behold, I see Satan fallen from heaven like lightning." So Origen reasons that Satan was Lucifer, once a being of light who fell from heaven. So all of this is people putting shit together. Well, this one says lightning, this one says this, so it must mean the same thing. But he wasn't the only 3rd century Christian to see Satan in Isaiah's verse. There's another guy. None of these people have normal names. This other guy's name was Tertullian. So he claimed the line was about the devil as well. And later writers echoed this interpretation. So here again, we just had two people putting shit together that doesn't originally make sense. If you look at the origins of it, it doesn't make sense at all. But because they're so stuck on the Bible being ultimate reality, which is what orthodoxy is, right? The Bible is ultimate reality, right? They had to figure out how to put all this together. So they said, well, this makes sense. Another guy comes out and he's a scholar or whatever. Well, this has to make sense. But you have to remember, these are scholars with orthodoxy Christian backgrounds. That means they have an agenda. There's no that's not even scholarly, if you ask me. There's no science or reasoning. It's just an agenda. Anytime there's an agenda behind something, we don't really get the truth most of the time. That's just my opinion. And then after this Tertullian guy claimed that this line was about the devil, a whole bunch of writers started saying the same thing. Gregory the theologian from 325 to 389, Eusebius of Caesarea 263 to 339 CE, and St. Gildas. They all said that they linked the devil with Isaiah's description of Lucifer. Writing in the 4th century, for example, this guy declared, "The nature of the divine essence is then above all conception by human intelligence. It is moreover well that it is so, for we should perhaps lose ourselves through pride like Lucifer if it were given to us too soon." So this is a bunch of dudes, man, that had, wasn't the Hebrews. It wasn't the Hebrews at all. The origins of the word didn't mean that at all. It was Christian theologians who put it together, period. Nobody else. Now, Hebrew scholars claim that Isaiah 14:12 is the only reference to Lucifer in the Old Testament, does not refer to Satan. Think about, so now it's starting to get even more stupid and complicated, right? The Jewish Encyclopedia says the line refers to a Babylonian king, and most biblical scholars now agree. Hebrew scholar Lee Fields explains that Isaiah 14:12 has nothing to do with Satan. But centuries of misreading changed the meaning of the passage. Fields. The name Lucifer, then meaning light bearer, is quite appropriate for Christians in their task of bringing the light of the gospel to the world. Well, then that still wouldn't make sense because Lucifer's a bad guy. Why would he bring the gospel to the world? Pointing to the New Testament verses calling Jesus the morning star, Fields continues, but of course, given the historic identification of Lucifer as the name for Satan, this meaning would be completely lost today. Christians have, for 1,700 years of biblical scholars dating back to this origin guy, proclaiming that Lucifer is Satan, is in fact bullshit. I mean, there's no way it could be real unless you put all this stuff together and then you take the original name from where it comes from, the Hebrew name Hallel, and you point your finger at those people and say, your version of it is bullshit. Our version of it's better, which is something that religion kind of does after a while. Bullshit. So the line fits with other biblical description of Satan fallen from heaven, plus centuries of cultural references, at least dating back to Dante, use Lucifer as another name for the devil. The evolution of Lucifer holds a valuable lesson. The meaning of words change over time because religions evolve. New interpretations breathe new meaning into text, and after all, no one today uses Lucifer as the title for Jesus, even if the New Testament calls Jesus the bringer of light. So, if anybody goes around preaching to you about anything, ask them that question. If they cannot answer that question, then they can't pound you with truth like they think they can. It doesn't mean that, to me, it doesn't mean that they're wrong, you're wrong, or any of it's wrong. It just means, like, I think that verse might be the one way to, I'm hoping, to open up the minds of Christians to say, look, maybe the text that you hold so sacred, rightly so, you should. All religious texts are sacred to religious people. There's nothing wrong with that. The Hermetic texts are sacred to me, but I know for a fact that if I looked at them as like ultimate reality and ultimate truth, and this thing teaches all of the mysteries, then I would be really in a bad spot. So this is where I'm telling you guys that all of the, and the reason why I say this is to say this, and I'm probably going to make a lot of enemies here, but I don't give a shit. Probably not a lot, not anything worth anything, but the mystery schools are all based around Venus and the rising sun. So it's not based around the worship of Venus or the worship of the rising sun or the worship of Jesus Christ. The mystery schools in the West are based around understanding the egregoric, fundamental, archetypal principles and energies behind these things. Nobody worships Lucifer. Nobody worships Satan. Nobody worships the sun. In fact, it's really all based upon philosophy and understanding the history of all this stuff and where it comes back and the egregoric energies attached to them. There's more reason. There's more reason in the mystery schools than there is mystical shit, actually, when you look at it. If you really get into studying the mysteries, when you get into understanding text, there's more reason there than there is with religiosity. Anyways. This was all fun to me to look into. So if you think about a star in itself, the only time that I think we should ever even worry about the symbol of a star, if it means something bad, and that's a whole other thing that we can look into, it's like maybe if we look at a 5-pointed star and it's upside down. Maybe. There's a whole debate about that too. But the symbol itself of the star or Venus or the bright morning star or the rising sun or twilight or all of this stuff just means something psychologically to our psyches on an egregoric level. On a collective conscious level, it means something to us. That's why it holds power. Magic power. It's not that mystical. And a lot of these guys, if these scholars that came out that were arguing over the stuff, no matter how crazy, no matter if their name is Cellulitis Dictorus from the 243rd BC, whatever, if they were born here today trying to argue some of the same crap that they were blatantly beating people over the head with back then, they'd get laughed at today because the information that's coming out today is way more intense and way more volatile. So people question a lot more nowadays than they would back then. Back then you had to be somebody special to even question that kind of stuff, you know. But it's interesting how they're talking about that. One guy said it means a Babylonian king. So let's look at what Wes says in here, right? All of these were excerpts from the book of Revelation, but I hope it gives us stuff to ponder over. The book of Revelation tells us what might come, but from Lucifer's viewpoint, and some of the verses are planned to happen. We could perhaps call it destiny. Lucifer knows Orion's plan, and I would suggest mostly because of Jesus and his teachings, the book of Revelation was relayed to John the Divine after Jesus. So in the Gnostic text, to round this up, long before he had even read the Gnostic text, this is from the Nag Hammadi Library and this gospel called On the Origin of the World. And here's a quote from it: the consummation of the age and the apocalypse. Before the consummation of the age, the whole place will be shaken by great thunder. Then the rulers will lament, crying out on the account of their death. The angels will mourn for their human beings, and the demons will weep for their times and seasons. And their people will mourn and cry out on account of their death. Then the age will begin, and they will be disturbed. Their kings will be drunk from the flaming sword and will make war against one another, so that the earth will be drunk from the blood that is poured out, and the seas will be troubled by that war. Then the sun will darken, and the moon will lose its light. The stars of the heavens will disregard their course, and great thunder will come out of great power that is above all the powers of chaos, and the place where the firmament of the woman is situated. The flat earthers like that, don't they? When she has created the first work, she will take off her wise flame of afterthought and will put on irrational wrath. Then she will drive out the gods of chaos, whom she had created together with the chief creator. She will cast them down to the abyss. They will be wiped out by their own injustice, for they will become like the mountains that blaze out fire, and they will consume one another until they are destroyed by their chief creator. And when he destroys them, he will turn against himself and destroy himself until he ceases to be. And their heavens will fall upon one another, and their powers will burn. Their realms will also be overthrown, and the chief creator's heaven will fall and split in two. Likewise, his stars and their sphere will fall down to the earth, and the earth will not be able to support them. They will fall down to the abyss, and the abyss will be overthrown. So even the mystics back then believed in some crazy shit, right? The Gnostics. I know if you believe any of that's literal, it could represent something, but if you believe those things are literal, then how Gnostic are you really? So in the Gnostic text, the end times are called the consummation of the age, which will happen every time there's a shift in the ages. So every time we go from one of these 25,000 year or whatever ages, all this stuff is supposed to happen. So like when the age of Aries turned into the age of Pisces around 50 BCE. However, there was no destruction of the matrix during the previous shifts of the ages. There was usually just a change of the guards. A new god became in charge of the new particular age. So he's arguing that Marduk has been in charge since the age of Aries. But now Enki is taken over when we move into the age of Aquarius. The changes that happen depend on many things. Some things the overlords can manipulate with technology from Saturn, but they can't manipulate the energy coming in from the real universe, or the Ka. They can only manipulate us. In the Gnostic version, it does not only talk about the changing of ages, but also about the final destruction of the Matrix, instigated by Orion. Which is kind of trippy because if you read the Gnostic version of it, it's like, okay, well, that one's going to destroy this one, then he's going to destroy himself. It does sound like programs kind of like turning in on itself, like a virus almost, you know, until even the programmer's dead. A leading force in all this is Archangel Michael with his Mi'kmaq warriors. And this is also mentioned in the Bible in Revelations 12, verses 7 through 9. Verse 7, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. Verse 8, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. Verse 9, the great dragon was hurled down, and the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who led the whole world astray. So both the Gnostic text and a source he had while writing, here he goes again with his damn source. Both the Gnostic text and a source I had while writing the papers go a step further, describing the destruction of the entire construct and the liberation of all souls who have been detained here. Moreover, Wes's source, he says, my source, sounds like David Wilcock, doesn't it? I've got insiders. Moreover, my source and the text both talk about humans who still don't want liberation and choose to go with Uriel and the Syrian alliance in their last stand against Orion. And those who survive will be placed in a hell dimension, and he has that in quotations. They will be completely isolated without any chance to regain energy from the central fire, or the galactic center. They are stuck with the little life force they have collected, or with the little life force they collected within themselves, which they cannot regenerate. Therefore, they will feed on each other first. They will feed on the humans who have more fire than they do, and when the humans are drained, the overlords will feed on each other until they are all dissolved into the surrounding cosmic waters and lose their personalities and their lives. The humans who choose to follow the overlords are, of course, spirited, and thus they can't dissolve, but they will, from what I understand, according to my source, Wes says, be trapped within the dimension without being able to sustain themselves because there is no energy left to rejuvenate from. They will lose their soul mind. So according to Wes's source, it goes right along with the Gnostic revelation. So there will also be a trial, and there will be a verdict. If the overlords are found guilty, they will remain in the hell dimensions. But if they are found innocent, they will be set free. This is where our human testimonies come in. This trial will take place because of what the overlords and their minions have done to us. If I personally appear before the Orion court in the future, what is he saying here? I think Wes is getting a little rowdy here. If I personally appear before the Orion court in the future, I will have no mercy on these beings after what they have done. Lucifer is very glib, convincing, and charming, and he can probably make the toughest warrior cry, but we must not fall for that manipulation. This is why it is so important that we are educating ourselves on narcissism and psychopathy while still incarnated here. Our hearts will soften and show them mercy, and they don't deserve mercy. This is very important. So Wes is telling us when all this stuff goes down, no mercy. Like we should go Cobra Kai on Lucifer and all of his courts. May the fourth be with you. All right, let's see. Where am I at here? Think about it. What would happen if we forgave them in court and they are set free? They will murder and plunder other star races out there in a never-ending fashion, and it will be partly our fault. And I can bet on that eventually they will start over and once again try to take heaven by force. Personally, I will speak up and ask the court to execute them immediately. This is a guy talking about how narcissistic we are, or humans are, and he thinks at the end of all things, there's going to be Wes Penre standing there, and he's going to be like, execute all the overlords, and they're going to listen to you. If what you're saying is true, man, we're not going to, we're just going to be in the bleachers, man. I will speak up and ask the court to execute them immediately instead of locking them into a certain dimension. These beings have managed to break out before, and Lucifer is very smart and innovative, especially when he's in trouble. I would not trust that they would remain in prison. Therefore, immediate termination would be better. These beings are not redeemable, in my opinion, and they will not repent, and even if they did, how on earth would they make amends for what they have done? I see no way they can make up for the damage they've created. They've kept an entire soul group hostage and under torture for millennia to an extent that is unfathomable. So don't show them mercy. They knew what they were doing, and they feel no remorse. That's a bit narcissistic, Wes. I bet you did. I bet you pictured yourself at the end of all times, didn't you, Wes? When all of this whole story that you're telling us and the overlords took over these other people and it all went to shit and they're all sitting in court and you just stood up in the back of the courtroom and said, execute them, and everybody started clapping, right? Is that what you thought? He says, I want to end this chapter with a quote from Matthew 11:12. This is from the Christian Standard Bible. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been suffering violence, and the violent have been seizing it by force. This has been a confusing verse for many, including scholars, but I've found an interpretation at BibleRef.com I think comes close to the truth. Jesus' reference to the days of John the Baptist likely means the time of John's ministry before he was imprisoned. Now, in this context, would then mean the moment in Jesus' ministry of introducing the kingdom of heaven. The above interpretation is close to what I have concluded as well from having the sources I had during my period, or my Wes Penre paper period. We now know that the overlords are trying to take heaven by force through us. They want to ride our avatars into the Ka and take it over, just like the Bible says. And I was also told that the overlords have received an ultimatum to set humankind free immediately, and I think that happened around the days of Jesus. His preaching made the overlords very uncomfortable. They thought they had all the time in the world to implement their agenda, but now it was clear that Orion had intentions to perhaps take actions. And since they have done what they can do to speed things up and to get humankind in a state where we are enlightened enough, technology-wise and spiritually, to usher in the singularity on the overlord's behalf. No one knows when the consummation of the age is supposed to happen, but personally I think it might be around the corner. It might even be past due. It will hopefully happen before the singularity is in place, but because of the human condition in general, it makes things much more complicated for Orion to interfere than they previously thought, and I will go into this some more later. Man, what if, like, Bubba Bingo, I like that. What if, how come everything, even that we talk about, man, like everything that we investigate, like even Göbekli Tepe and all these things, like what is it about the West where we have to like originate, we have to like enclose or encapsulate all this stuff into the Bible all the time? Like even in this book, it just bothers me. It's like we gotta put that Bible story in there. Well, the Bible, even you're saying it, even people that aren't Christians say it. Well, the Bible says this, so that makes sense. Why are we using the Bible as a catalyst for truth, even if you're not a Christian, even if you're not associated with it, even if you're an ultimate truth seeker? I've heard this more and more. Is it just a condition? Is it like a collective thing that we do? Like even if we went and studied something scientifically almost and saw geometrical patterns in the way things create, and we'd have to run back and find a Bible verse to go with it for it to make it mystic to us or magical or something, you know? I don't know. So anyways, I say this. I say that we explore things consciously and figure this out ourselves. And the best way to do this is to enhance our ability to be clairvoyant, to understand certain things. And I think that the Vault of Adepti was a cool way to do this, using flashing colors, because they used light. They thought light was the answer to lots of things. Using the perception that we have, in other words, with flashing colors, to be able to move our consciousness into different realms and explore it that way. Nowadays, no one talks about it anymore, but I would love to have a vault. Where did that thing go anyways? Right here? Yeah. I wonder how long they sat in there, like staring at those symbols, trying to project their consciousness through them. Anyways, we're at the top of the hour. We got to take our commercial break here. If you can support the Fringe FM, do so. I think that was pretty interesting, but I'm not convinced. I'm still not convinced. I think we're like 14, 15 chapters into this book. The only thing that I'll say about Wes that makes sense to me is that there's something else going on as far as energetically is concerned to try to keep us in a state of misery. That's it. The rest of the stuff, I don't know. I mean, this guy took stitching stuff, turned it upside down. The Bible, which, like I said, it depends on who you are, if that matters or not, turned it upside down. Everything's turned upside down, and we're still supposed to believe it all based on a source which didn't talk to him through a clairvoyance or anything like that. It actually talked to him, what he says, through a natural way that we have no idea who he is. We should question more and more. Damn it.
Lean
Be right back.
forward slightly. Look straight at the speaker and listen with a sparkle
4
in your
minutes,
eye.
maybe. I think
As
it's
though
like
you might
3.5.
be thinking, gee, this is the most wonderful thing I ever heard in all my life.
Of the show is being brought to you by Whatever We Have in Stock Are Us, your one-stop place to shop for whatever we happen to have lying around at the time.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on the Fringe FM.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show, and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm, or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
So that you're wasting all your days looking for something that is right in front of you. And I just want them to notice you.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void here live on the Fringe FM. If you want to call in, you can. It's 501-777-5631 if you want to chime in. Earlier we were talking about the correlation between Lucifer, Jesus, and that phrase, the morning star. And the truth is, nobody knows the answers because we weren't back then like writing that stuff, but it is something pretty perplexing, right? It is pretty perplexing. And you will see that a lot of the Western mystery traditions are based on a Luciferian concept of rising the consciousness through the heart, which is talked about all throughout the Bible in a good way, right? And Jesus says, oh, I'm the OG bright and morning star. That's the way I look at it in the Bible. So you got people saying that Lucifer's the morning star, and they all argued over it based on this Hebrew word Hillel or whatever. But in Revelations, which was one of the last books to be added to Bible, Jesus states, I'm the bright morning star. That's the way I look at it, like it's some kind of gangster war, you know. You're not. I am. I'm the OG. All right. So just to tell you the truth, when it comes to me, the idea of Lucifer is just a concept to me. The light bringer it's not something that scares me. There's stuff that scares me, don't get me wrong. Oh, man, I forgot to mention this too. I talked to Anthony today, and you know how I feel about the kid. He's very truth-telling, right? So he's not going to bullshit you at all. So he called me today, and I missed his call, and I called him back, and he swears up and down that he heard a Sasquatch in Georgia. So we got to get him on to talk about that, right? He swears up and down he heard one. I think it was him and his family and all kinds of stuff that were out there camping or something, and they heard that whooping that the Sasquatch does. So we're going to have him on tomorrow night. Jason Quitt's going to be on the program. For those that listen on the radio station, podcast, or whatever, we're going to talk about his book, Gates of the Anunnaki, which we could ask him some questions based on the stuff we've been reading, but it's more probably going to be based around some stuff that he found that's pretty interesting. Also, who else do we have? We got Aaron Voot coming up next week. Ronnie Pontiac, one of the last students of Manly P. Hall, is coming on the program. Also have a guy, Mike Martin, who is coming on the program next week, early next week. We'll have that broadcast. And this guy actually claims that he can move through stargates. He wrote a book about it, but he can move through stargates in lucid dreams. Revelation singular. He can move through stargates in lucid dreams. I want to hear about it. I can't wait to talk to him too. So if you're getting bored with the book reading, this isn't really a boring book though. I mean, I don't believe these concepts are real, but there's some interesting stuff in here nonetheless. I hate these headphones. I really do. What else? There was something else I was going to mention. I don't know. It's been raining all day so much I can't even think straight. Rain makes me stupid. All right. So there are holes in the grid, Wes says. And worlds, all worlds, whether stars or planets, have energy grids around them. This is nothing unique to planet Earth. When the world is inhabited by souls in combination with physical beings, the energy field expresses itself as a toroidal field. That's kind of true, I think. When we had Claude Swanson, Dr. Swanson on the program, I don't know if you guys remember that. That was such a cool show. He wrote a whole thing about toroidal fields, and I think it's legit. And based on my esoteric magical practices, I know it's real. Just can't really see it. So these, when it comes to the human body, this fields then encircles the particular world in a continuous and constant loop. The same thing applies to souls that inhabit physical bodies. The soul mind is in the cells, but the soul energy radiates outwardly and creates a toroidal field around the body. The first level of learning is explained in this in the Wes Penre papers. Under normal circumstances, the creator gods leave the grid mostly untouched because the grid is a natural phenomenon and should be there. Perhaps if necessary, they adjust it to some degree with technology, but that's more than I know. The Earth grid and how it's constructed. The difference between the grid around other worlds and our grid is that Uriel encapsulated our grid with technology. It could maybe seen metaphorically as someone putting isolation around an electric wire so the energy flows a certain way. If the encapsulation then stretches in a circle around the planet, it keeps other souls out and souls inside kept in. The energy mostly comprises our collective soul energy, so we can imagine the voltage in such a grid. This was only a simple metaphor, of course. I don't know anything about all that, man. But I do know this, thanks, Dennis, for sharing the show, brother. I do know this, that when Robert Monroe started trying to leave the earth in his astral form, first part of the book is so freaking cool because he's flying over people's houses, he's visiting his neighbors and all this other stuff. But as the story goes on, he starts to leave the earth, right? So when he leaves the earth in his astral form, there's this M-band noise and it gets really thick. And then it kind of lets off the further he gets away from earth. So I wonder if that's kind of this grid, or it could just be he's moving through everybody's collective unconscious and it's loud as shit. I don't know. So by encapsulating the grid, Uriel also accomplished something else. He kept light out except for 4%, which is the tiny spectrum of visible light. Light carries information, and the visible light trap is a part of the amnesic system he set up. So we can't remember who we are, where we came from, and where we're going. I explained this in the Wes Penre papers, how this was done. And what is more, they used our energies to tighten and strengthen the grid. How did they do this? Due to that, we vibrate on a locked-in frequency, and the more chaos and tumultuous, the tighter the grid, and the less chance there is to penetrate it. Still, there are those pillars of light, which means the cloaking was never perfect and never will be. The grid will never be repaired and made perfect. The Dark Lords couldn't do it in the past, and they certainly can't do it now because it's too late. 7 billion people are vibrating in unison towards a higher consciousness. You can almost hear the musical pitch change upwards, like when you tune a guitar to a higher note. And as a musician, in my mind, I can hear it literally. Is anybody still hearing that crazy hum? Wes's sources are the Wes Penre papers, yeah. Does anybody still hear that? Because I did hear that once. And when it was all over the TV and everybody was talking about it, do you guys still hear that at all? I don't hear it in Arkansas anymore, but back in the day, man, I used to hear that, just that weird hum. And because the woods are kind of, we're far enough from the highway that sometimes I thought it was trucks on the highway and stuff, But at certain times of night, I would go out to the road down there, and then there would be like no cars because it's like 3. You know how you can hear the distant cars and diesels? They kind of sound like a hum when they're coming from both sides. But there was nobody on the road, and for almost every single night, I heard that weird hum. Do you guys ever hear that anymore? Let me know. The doctor says I'm not a Squatch person. I'm not either. And I'm not sure Anthony is either, but he told me he heard one. Crowley refers to the lust card as Hagith in the name of the Olympic planetary intelligence of Venus from the Christian Grimoire Arbitel. Yep, that's right. That's where we get the energy of lust from, is from Venus, actually. Yeah. What headphones do you like? I'll tell you right now. These headphones are, like, if you're going to listen to music or you're going to listen to audio, there's all kinds of good headphones out there. But these are the ones, these are like the OGs that go back to, this is like the Fender Stratocaster of headphones, and they broke tonight. Just right before the show. They're the Sony MDR V6s, and you got to make sure you don't get fake ones too, but those are the best. The second best are like the MDR whatevers that have that blue line on it. I don't think we can live without the Earth's magnetic field, which may be part of the toroidal field. So, yeah, I agree with that. Thought this was Elon's Boring Company tunneling. See, we investigated a haunting, and it turned out to be, Dennis says, a highway miles away due to a natural ground fissure. Yeah, so all right, so you guys haven't answered the question yet. Y'all don't hear the hum anymore, do you? Okay. So anyways, Wes, I have ADD. This is like the ADD show. So Wes is saying that there's holes in this grid. So this means there were, to a very small extent, always holes in the grid ever since the day Uriel and his team set it up in its current fashion and some light started shining through. This means that when energies out in the Ka are extra strong, additional light carrying new information can pass through this. This is exactly what happened during the nanosecond between... What the hell is he talking about? This is exactly what happened during the nanosecond between 1987 and 2012, when the solar system aligned with the galactic center, or the central fire, or the womb of the mother. I'm lost on that one, dude. I'm sorry. I was 5 years old in 1987. Although what I wrote in the above quote from the Wes Penre papers is accurate, the research points towards a second reason why the overlords don't attempt to repair the grid. As discussed in the chapters about the metaverse, soon when the singularity is in place, the invader force doesn't need the Earth grid anymore because they will have set up a new grid, which is called the cloud. How were we locked into a certain frequency, or how were we locked into a certain frequency is the question. I had this explained to me by someone from Orion. Dude, come on, tell us how you're talking to people from Orion. Just say it, man. We already think, at least I do, think you're full of shit. So what are you going to say that's going to be worse, that's going to reveal anything when it comes to you talking to aliens from Orion? But the same thing has also been discussed by another source, the Palladians. This is how they explained it. Oh, we're going to get a direct quote from the Palladians here. Here we go. Because of the time locks that were put upon the portals here, and because the corridors of time are owned, those out in the cosmos are not able to find Earth. Its light of existence was erased. A different electromagnetic spectrum, a harmless one that does not register the kind of consciousness Earth has, was put here so that Earth could not be found. Earth was covered up and quarantined. Oh, they did the COVID thing on us, man. So if only one road exists in and out, and it is locked down, then commerce is forbidden from entering the time corridor, and it is cut off completely from all other influences. Huh. So what about all the people claiming that they're speaking to all these galactic beings and stuff? If what you're saying is true, then none of these people had any contact with any aliens consciously. I also discussed this subject to some extent with an Orion contact I had, from whom I learned that Earth sits amid a larger trade route, blocking and congesting it, making trade difficult in some areas along the trail of stars. The Pleiadians are also correct in that the Earth vibrates within a frequency that is very difficult to find from outside the matrix. Oh man, if that were true, if we find out that's true later, all the people that are like, all the I want to believe UFO people are going to be pissed. They'll probably kill Marduk or Lucifer or something. This next part is called Uriel's Solution to Grid Discrepancies. So as we now have found out, the grid, the way Archangel Uriel set it up, was never perfect, and they could not completely perfect it. However, for the most part, it isolated this construct from the rest of the universe. It did its job thoroughly enough. However, there was one big problem. Because there were some holes in the grid already to begin with, Uriel must have realized that these holes could also be used to leave the matrix if the human soul group became clever enough to figure that out. The holes could, of course, be guarded, which I'm sure they were to begin with, but if a soul decided to go out through one of these holes, all the guards could do was try to manipulate and scare the soul that it is dangerous to go out there. But because we have free will, they must let us go if our intention, our will is strong enough. And this was a problem. The solution became the tunnel of light. He's got the tunnel of light and slants. Uriel used our solar energy to energize a tunnel, which most souls see when they enter the afterlife. The recycling process had already been set up before the tunnel was created, but it was usually done by letting spirit guides lead the deceased to the location in the astral from where the recycling process could be done. Now the overlords needed something more seductive than that which would catch the soul's attention before the grid did, and they did it by creating a magnetic pull and a feeling of well-being, so to the soul would not hesitate to go into the tunnel. Oh my God, man. So you're telling me that tunnel of light that everybody sees when they die, all the NDE stuff that we've read about or they've talked to us about, you're telling me that those people are going through a tunnel that Uriel created because there's a hole in the grid, and instead of us actually going out through the proper hole to escape the matrix, Uriel put a tunnel, I'm making sure I understand this right, put a tunnel in there, and then he made sure that the tunnel felt good. And it was full of, like, I guess he dumped a bunch of Molly on our soul as we were floating through this thing, right? So that we wouldn't actually escape through the real hole, right? I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a good story. The solution became to fill the tunnel with more love than the soul had ever felt during the incarnation on Earth. Yeah, he just dumped a bunch of ecstasy into it. This love vibration was again stolen from our human soul energy by collecting loosh from us. The departed soul didn't know any better, and if they were aware enough to spot the grid and the holes therein, their attention went to the tunnel. And once inside there, the magnetic pull was and is strong, and the soul is sucked in until they reach the end of the tunnel, where a hologram of someone well known to the soul is meeting them and luring them into the recycling center, technically from Mars. But it appears to be projected onto the moon, which is located under the Earth grid. And within the Earth's atmosphere, they don't want the soul to go to Mars because that is outside the grid. Damn, that's kind of freaky. Because Michael Newton, if you look into all his books, there's so many of those people that did between lives. After they died, he would take them in between lives, and they would all go through that tunnel, right? And they would all say, it feels so wonderful. They all described it like they took a couple of, ecstasy pills at a rave or something. It should be noted here that the tunnel of light may be a misleading concept because the tunnel itself is dark, and the light is at the end of the tunnel. But the magnetic pull and the love the soul feels hits them already before they enter the tunnel. So that's why everybody's depressed. Oh, because they sucked out all our loving energy and put it in this tunnel. What a sick trap. What a sick game. Master Trismegistus says, I was in Illinois in a clear blue sky. I watched for it. No moon approached the sun. I don't know. I was in Arkansas. A black circle went over the sun. That's all I know. This worked well to begin with, and this tunnel is still up and running, although the entire Between Lives area, or BLA, will almost certainly be abandoned when the singularity is in order. Then everything will be replaced by the artificial intelligent cloud, or our new grid, which will become much more secure and non-penetrable than the current Earth grid. The entire Between Lives area will eventually be obsolete, as well as the Earth grid, which will dissolve when soul minds on Earth no longer give it their energy, but instead give it to the metaverse and the cloud. I think the overlords and the elite were fully aware of that when the internet had been up and running for a few decades. Enough souls would wake up to create more holes in the grid because the vibration and frequency range of those who wake up extends beyond the frequency limit of the five senses, within which the grid in general vibrates. They knew the grid would start looking more and more like a Swiss cheese with many, many holes in it. And this is also what happened. Around 2008, there was a cosmic battle in the solar system between Orion and the Sirian Alliance. Pew, pew. And the weapons that were used created additional holes in the grid. But what really made a difference was the nanosecond. Many people woke up during those 25 years, and this affected the grid. It does not automatically mean that souls began to leave the matrix, although some souls might have. After all, even though many woke up and some of those people died during this time period as well, they did not know about the holes in the grid yet. They might have seen the grid without knowing what it is, and despite their awakening state, they probably took the usual route to the tunnel of light. Although the Palladians mentioned the grid already in the 1990s, they never suggested that people should take that route because they have their own agenda, wanting us to shift our timeline, so they wish for us to stay within the matrix. It was not until around 2012, when I released the Wes Penre papers, The Second Level of Learning, it became known that we can exist through the grid after body death and enter the Ka, the spirit universe of Orion. Since then, my mission in life has been to make people aware of this and how to prepare for those who want to leave the matrix after this incarnation. Exactly how to leave and what to do to prepare while still alive here on Earth will be further explained in the following chapters. Well, look, I've talked to some people that say they've seen the grid, right? Through out-of-body experiences or through ayahuasca. Some people have said that, actually. There's been several people that have reached out to me since probably like 2016 or, I don't know, 2017 maybe. I could say at least 100 people have reached out to me and said, man, I saw a grid. I had an out-of-body experience and I saw this grid, or I took ayahuasca or DMT and I saw this grid. Doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. It could just be a big rumor thing or something cool to say at the time. I don't know, but I'd have to think that many people telling me about it, at least one of them was telling me the truth. That's my reasoning. But so what does the grid look like? Many have asked me how we recognize the grid and how it looks, just to avoid what we're going through, just to avoid that we're going through a false grid. The good news is that if we follow the procedures in this chapter, we can't go through a false grid. Because I am still alive, I have not seen the grid myself, and if I have seen it between lives, I certainly don't remember it due to amnesia. I would think of it as a fuzzy barrier surrounding the planet, and because we can only fully see it when we have disconnected from the body, we will then be in the nanoverse, where intention and imagination are two major parts of existence. The astral realm is the realm of the mind, and as I have repeatedly been saying, therefore I can imagine that the grid will look slightly different for different people, but it really is of no consequence. If you look for the grid in the astral after your body has died, you will see it, regardless of whether you perceive it as gray, bluish, white, or any other color. You will recognize it as the grid, and this is nothing you need to be concerned about. Metaphorically speaking, imagine how in a laboratory a scientist has set up two rods apart from each other, and then he sends a certain amount of energy between them. You will see a white zigzag light moving between the rods. You won't mistake that for anything else but energy. I'm not suggesting the grid looks exactly like that, but what I'm implying is that you will have the same certainty as in the lab example that what you're seeing after soul departure is the grid. Whether you will see light coming in through the holes in the grid, I don't know for certain. It's speculative. I just know we will have no problem spotting these holes. During and after the nanosecond, the grid became very damaged from the Overlord's perspective, and there was no way they could repair it, not even with their Orion tech, without increasing the vibration of the entire soul group, which would be too risky for them. Because we would all wake up, we'd all increase in consciousness, right? They couldn't even make it perfect to begin with, as it were, and they can't guard it anymore either. So there are too many holes. So they have given up on it for these two reasons already mentioned. And if souls exist through these holes, if we slip through, the overlords must let them go. However, they count on that most souls, are still ignorant about the grid and will continue using the light tunnel to go to the recycling center on or inside the moon. Now, when the cat is out of the bag, and after I've released the Wes Penre papers, why does the elite not completely stop this information from spreading? Probably because you sound crazy, and that just helps their cause, honestly. I believe there are different reasons for that, and I'll list them here. Number one, it sounds too incredible for most people to believe. That's what I just said. Number two, to ignore the truth when it's revealed can sometimes be the elite's best weapon. Not to say I have not been attacked. I have. Number three, the overlords know that even people who know about the grid and might want to leave after this lifetime will be too afraid of the unknown when push comes to shove, that they will take the safe route through the tunnel after all. Therefore, the overlords are not too concerned to miss a few souls. They don't need all of us. Because, as one of my sources said, and I paraphrase, there is only a certain number of souls that the overlords can handle. Number four, the overlords think they'll make their case easier on them if they let some of us escape. They hope it will look good in Orion's eyes and that they keep up their end of the contract. Number five, think about humankind as ants inside and upon an anthill. You pick up the anthill because you want to collect a certain number of ants for whatever reason. However, when you pick up the anthill, there are some ants falling to the side and escaping. Would you really mind and go after them, or would you let them go? Number six, much of the information I shared in the papers comes out of discussions I had and information I gathered from beings not from Earth. I even had contact with Orion. There is a reason why the overlords don't want to mess with that. It has to do with their own safety and security. They pick their battles. Oh, so Wes, the Queen has your back, does she? I'm going to be like, what if all this stuff is true, man? I'm going to be pissed. Instead of interfering too much, particularly as they can't do anything to repair the grid, they hurry up to usher in the singularity. The faster they can implement it, the safer the overlords will become. In the meantime, they count on it they can still keep us humans as their hostages. Oh. What do y'all think? Make friends with the Keymaster, that's right. Let's see. Marduk was the name of Mars in Babylon, if I'm not mistaken. Could be. When you get multiple people experiencing the same thing, it rattles your reality. Difficult to deny. MDMA, nice analogy. Yeah, that's what I think it sounds like. It sounds like they're just dumping a bunch of ecstasy into it. The grid is blue. Dennis, have you seen the grid? I know someone who said that she saw the grid. She wasn't stoned. Yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me that too. There's blue transparent. Can you build a hatch door in the grid? I don't know. Make friends with the Keymaster. I don't know, man. I don't know why these people don't write novels either. On Leaving the Matrix. There we go. There's some bad news and there's some good news. The bad news is there's only one way I know to leave the Matrix. And the good news is that leaving is achievable. Some of you readers already know about this because you have followed his work, or Wes's work, while others did not know before reading this book. We need to go through a hole in the grid. Don't go. So Wes Penre is saying, when you die, don't go to the light. Don't go through a tunnel. Look up, find the grid, and look for a hole in the grid and go through that. I think if that's the truth, most people won't do it because most people are scared of the unknown. I mean, let's be honest. I've met people my age, older men, especially women, no offense, but a few men that if there's something like unknown, they'll fall apart. They can't handle it, you know? So imagine what happens like when we die, they're like, oh, there's the light. There's the tunnel. I feel the MDMA love. I'm safe. They're probably, and even if there's a thought in their head going, I might get reincarnated and forget who I am. Well, that's still safer than going through that dark hole. I don't know where that goes. I can imagine lots of people doing that, you know. Most readers probably read this book because on one level, they have had enough abuse from narcissistic partners, friends, parents, coworkers, bosses, authorities, and from some unseen force that seems to be lurking in the background. And you may be wondering if there is a solution and perhaps even a way to leave the matrix. I want to start by explaining the overall procedure on how to leave, and then I'll get into the details. The procedure is simple. The planet is, as explained already, surrounded by a grid, comprising the soul energy of the entire human soul group and other beings, animals, and plants living here, and it's held in place as it currently exists by technology. However, there are many holes in it. And immediately after you have died from your current body, you just focus on your hole of choice when you have spotted the grid and go through it. You will notice when you leave your dead body that the astral, and later the ka outside the construct, is thought responsive. It means that if you randomly think something, it may manifest right before you. Therefore, many people who have had near-death experiences and come back to tell us about it sometimes say they saw strange things in the astral. Some were scary, and other things were quite pleasant. A few of these creations might be your own creations, although you are not aware of it. You might think whatever you experienced was there before you arrived. Some of it was, and some of it was not. You will also notice that you can travel with thought, or nano-travel. You think yourself somewhere, and you will be there instantly. Again, those who have experienced this usually tell us it feels strange to begin with, but they quickly get the hang of it and learn how to control their thoughts. Outside the body, which you now have left behind in death, will have a 360-degree vision, so immediately, without lingering, look up. Look up with your dead body as a reference pointing underneath you, and you will spot the grid. And as I mentioned in the last chapter, you will not mistake the grid for anything else. Focus with your mind's eye on any hole in the grid, because there will be many. And think yourself through it. For instance, think inside your mind with an intention, I'm going through the hole in that grid now. You will notice your command will be executed instantly, and you will be baffled how fast you are on the other side of the grid and out in the solar system. Now you have entered the Orion universe. Well, that's kind of cool, actually. Just be careful after you left your dead body not to pay attention to anything or anybody in the astral. In case you meet someone who tries to guide you or interact with you, these are likely tricksters who want to distract you from leaving. These distractions can be projections of dead relatives and loved ones, but remember they are just projections to lure you into the tunnel. They're not real. Just ignore whatever you may encounter, if anything, and focus only on going through a hole in the grid. So, what you will see on the other side, I was told, we will see what we are prepared to see. There is no limited electromagnetic frequency band that will prevent us from seeing the universe as it is. It depends on the individual what they will see. If you use tunnel vision, stubbornly believing only what NASA has told us, this is what you will see at first, until you have broadened your perceptions. However, because you have some knowledge now, after reading this book, you will probably see a myriad of stars and galaxies, much more so than you've ever seen in a NASA picture, which only shows 4% of the universe. You may also see some of the spider webs, or the cosmic highway upon which you will travel with your mind and which connects everything, making it possible to travel anywhere in the universe in the blink of an eye when you know where to go. Dude, this is trippy, man. Think about this, though. Like when we read that book, Occult Anatomy of Man, right? You guys remember when we read that a few days ago. So Manly P. Hall said that the human body, or the human, comes from the brain, and man is an inverted plant, right? And it's to the brain that will return. Well, if it is a plasma universe and we just can't see all the cosmic highways and spider webs and stuff, which kind of look like a big brain, if we go through a hole in the grid, then basically we're just flying up into a big universal brain. So where do we go, dude? We're going to get lost. We find the universal pineal gland up in there. What do we do here? When you're on the other side of the grid, you may want to continue away from there because you are still in the solar system, which is the overlord's domain. You now have the freedom to explore the universe if you like, just by thinking yourself somewhere to see what it looks like. You can never get lost because when you don't know where you are, all you must do is to think yourself back to where you started, just outside the grid, and you can start all over. Although there might be souls who want to explore the new environment after exiting through the grid, it's my assumption that most want to go to a place that's safe, somewhere they can feel secure until they have more knowledge. You travel with your thoughts, so here is what I personally will do. I will give myself the command, I am with the highest possible incarnation of the Queen of the Stars now. It is important to issue your commands without putting any time into the command. For example, if you think to yourself, I will go to the Queen, this will probably not do it because it doesn't say you want to go there instantly. Your command only says that sometime you're going to go to the Queen. In other words, he's saying be specific. And nothing might happen. You might put it on hold, so I hope you get my point. I took this example with the Queen because she is waiting for us, and I have heard she is more than eager to see us after we have exited through the grid. She wants to get us somewhere we feel secure so she can brief us and we can brief her. She will then help us to the next step, and don't be afraid to meet her. Remember, she is you and you are her. She is your real mother. From her you emanated. Dude, I wish I had a clip of that, man. It's making me think about Michael Newton's thing too, when he sent that guy to the edges of reality, right? And he had this dude in a hypnotic state, and he was saying he was in between lives, and he kept telling him to push out further, push out a little further. And it was like his soul was saying, I can't, it's hard. Like he was having a hard time getting to the edges of reality in between life states, right? But he said he heard singing, and Michael Newton was like, push a little further, just a little further. And the guy said, it's a mother. I can hear her voice singing. So in the ultimate end of reality, there's some mother there waiting on us. It'd be crazy if that's what he thinks it's a queen, like Michael Newton, and this guy thinks it's a queen, and they go all the way out to the edge and they find the queen, and then boom, you're coming out of vagina again and you're still tricked. Like, damn. Well, I guess it's not that. It's going to be like, this is like trippy stuff to think about. To some people, this entire procedure may sound scary and unsafe, but it's because it's unknown. Still, mind you that almost all star races and star beings in the universe do the same thing. They separate from their home world, which on another level can be considered a mother. Although Earth is not even our home, on one level, we consider it as such. The principle is the same, except the Queen is even more eager to see us because we are her direct children. We have her spirit, and we've been held prisoners. We need to go to her, so we eventually can separate from her naturally, like a human child separates from their mother, as discussed earlier. We never got the chance to do this before we were kidnapped. If all of this is frightening, the other option is to continue to reincarnate on Earth as we have done literally thousands of times and continue experiencing trauma. In our next incarnation, we will most likely enter the metaverse and the singularity, and I think it's a good idea to avoid that. keeping in mind that the overlords have in mind for us a long-term plan. Remember that we are usually afraid of the unknown because we search for safety and security on a regular basis. We don't necessarily like change. Well, I like change. You don't like change. Some people don't, though. Unless we know for a fact that change will be for the better. Going through the grid will be for the better. But of course, you don't feel that's a guarantee, so there is a chance you might choose to go through the light tunnel just to be safe. This is, of course, your free choice, but I would suggest you think it through. Remember, guys, that Gareth is reading this. This is the book the stuff he read. So this is the shit he's reading before he thinks he's about to die. This is, of course, your free choice, but I would suggest that you think it through very thoroughly while you're on Earth. Conclude and stick with it. If you choose the grid, start planning already now. You may have many years left to live, but even though you might be young, you never know when it's your time to go, so it's best to be prepared. I will now go over some details of what we must do to prepare ourselves for the exit. Don't worry if you think I bring up many things. I will summarize it all in the end of this chapter to make it very easy. The things I am telling you in between are just things that are good to know for some, while other things are essential. Dun, dun, dun. She won't show you her face. She's always veiled. Really? I've never met the Queen. Is that what you're talking about, Brian? You know that you've seen the Queen? This guy read too many of the Eternals comic books. I mean, really. Do you hear the mother singing, or is it a humming that you can't define? I don't know. I was talking about if you read Journey of Souls, like the guy he would put all these people through hypnosis, and then he would send them like in between life states. So he would get them to tell him what's happening between lives, and he sent this one guy all the way out to the edge of reality, like as far as he could. He commanded him to under hypnosis. And when the guy said it became harder and harder and harder to get to the threshold of reality while he was under this hypnotic state. And then at the very last of the session, Michael Newton said, push just a little further, right? And so he pushed a little further, and the guy started crying. I believe he started crying. I have to go back and listen to it. And he got real emotional. And he said, it's a mother at the edge of reality. So, I don't know, man. I'll do a survey after this. Do you choose the light tunnel, or do you go through a hole in the grid? I'm interested to see what everybody is going to say. Everyone is unique, so please consider what I have to say here and see how it applies to you. Some humans are braver than others, depending on what kind of trauma we've been through and how well we have healed from our emotional wounds. The number one thing to do, obviously, is to make a firm decision that you want to leave. We have a small window in time when we can do this. After the singularity is put in place, it is much more difficult to exit, if possible at all. When you have made your choice, you need to educate yourself enough to understand that nothing in the Matrix is worth saving. Nothing. You need to detach your mind from everything that is of this construct. It is crucial that you no longer have attachments to anything here when you exit, because if you do, it might be the one thing that will prevent you from exiting, and you may choose the tunnel of light instead. Although this physical reality is extremely harsh and abusive, and many of us feel we want to have nothing more to do with it, there might be a few things that we still miss in the process. Like our pets, certain material things, our partner, sex, physical touch, our children, our friends and relatives, and more. Hell yeah, man, I'm going to miss all that stuff. This is normal, of course, but to leave, we need to let go of all this because we can't take any of it with us. This can't be very difficult, especially to separate from our loved ones. All we can do is try to educate them, but it's their choice. I'm supposed to tell my kid that, hey, if you by chance die, don't go through the light tunnel, find a hole in the grid. He's going to think I'm crazy. We can't and shouldn't force them, even if it's tempting to try. What I just told you doesn't imply that you can't enjoy what you have right now. What I'm trying to say is that you need to come to a point in your mind when you realize you can't take any of this with you, nothing here on earth. And I hope you're okay with that. When you feel you grieve your future losses, try to think about that. Even if you choose to reincarnate here again, you're still not going to meet the ones you love again because they are no more. You'll be born with amnesia, develop a new personality, and so will they. And when you've reincarnated, you will have forgotten everything about them, and so will they when it comes to you. None of us is the same person in different incarnations. Instead, you can hope that they, as soul minds, will one day be able to break through their programming and come after you through the grid when it's their turn to die. In Orion, you will again have total recall of all your incarnations. What comic book are you talking about, Dennis? I want to read this thing. Is it called The Eternals? Is that what you called it? I got to check it out. Another thing to remember is that you have lived thousands of lifetimes here and you have had thousands of children. What about all those other children you've forgotten about in this lifetime? Are they less important than the ones you are raising in this life? Must you save them too? The answer to all this is that the Matrix is not our home, and it should not be this way. Therefore, this construct must be destroyed, and the criminal overlords and their human minions must be put on trial because this is all extremely sinister. In the meantime, the best we can do is to leave and tell our story to those outside the Matrix. That's the most helpful thing we can do. If our children and loved ones decide to follow, after all, when it's their turn, they can connect with you if they wish to. Once out of the grid, they can think, I am with my most previous earthly mother now, and they will immediately go to you wherever you are in the universe at the moment. Damn. All of this information came from aliens from Orion and to Wes. Can you exit the Matrix and later decide to come back to check in on your loved ones and perhaps help them in that sense? Well, you can, but it's not advisable. If you do, you will again be trapped here in the reincarnation cycle, and your exit would have been in vain. You will have helped no one, including yourself. Also, once you're out in the Ka, you probably won't even think in those terms anymore. Although you'll be the same person you are now after you've exited, you'll see things from a much broader perspective, literally from another dimension. If you want to go back once you've exited, I doubt you'll even find the Matrix. It was your normal environment so long as you were in the projection, but once you left, the projection disappears, like in a computer game, and you don't know where the computer game is anymore. So we can't come back. Getting rid of all attachments means more than I just mentioned. In previous chapters, we discussed our trauma bond with Lucifer and how he gave us his mind and we gave him ours. That's a deep bond that must be broken. Anyone who has been in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath knows how traumatic that is. And if you've managed to separate from them, and the healing process afterwards has probably been difficult. Hopefully, you are on the mend, and perhaps you've even healed from lots of it, and now you have healthier relationships in your life. Either way, we also must disconnect from Lucifer. This does not only mean we decide to leave the Matrix and to have nothing to do with him anymore. That's the first decision we must make in this regard, but there are more things we need to consider. Almost everybody on the entire planet is codependent to Lucifer, and most people have become like him, or like his introject of us, and how he wants us to be. We are continuously executing his wishes, and we don't even know they are his. Almost everything here on earth is his will, executed by us. That is a highly codependent thing to do. Well then, I didn't know that, man. Now we know. See, now we know the truth. We know it was Lucifer all along, and he did this freaking trauma bond thing with us, you know, the love dump like Static X talks about, and then pulled it away, did the hot and cold, got us all trauma bonded to him. So now we're attached. I don't know, man. It's not that hard to detach from people that treat you like shit. It doesn't matter how bad they love bomb you. Just think about how they treated you like shit. It's that easy. Lucifer's more powerful, though. I get it. The star races out there understandably don't want the human soul group out in the Ka in our current condition. Most soul minds being copies of Lucifer, creating havoc out there without even knowing what we're doing, having an overly reactive and often aggressive manner. Getting rid of the attachments to this world in general is a big step in the process of disconnecting from our cosmic abuser, Lucifer. Still, well, that doesn't make sense still, man, because if all the mystery schools are teaching, all of the mystery schools teach detachment from everything, they're not trauma bonding with you, so I don't get it. It's it's just so confusing. I'm so perplexed. Still, we must also understand that this trauma bond with him is real. It must be handled as any narcissistic relationship. And we need to heal from the trauma we've been subjected to by him and his minions, who are the personal narcissists in our lives. Oh, dude, you just gave yourself away, man. Come on. Like, I'm not saying, I'll never say that something is wrong or bullshit, but this guy just totally gave himself away right there. Unless I'm reading this wrong. We must also understand that this trauma bond with him is real, our trauma bond with Lucifer. It must be handled as any narcissistic relationship, and we need to heal from the trauma we've been subjected to by him and his minions, who are the personal narcissist in our lives. So everybody that's been a narcissist in your life has been a Luciferian minion. They're not a human being. They're not somebody that developed a shark-like nature because they were raised around sharks and they had to raise themselves, so therefore they became bastards too. They're just not human. They're Lucifer's minions. You're more important. This is all psychologically fun and perplexing to me to read this sometimes. If we ignore this important step, we will most likely be too afraid to leave the Matrix when push comes to shove, and we choose Daddy, Mummy, Lucifer instead of separating from him and going to the Ka. The principle is the same as separating from our earthly mother. We need to do it, or we will be attached to her for the rest of our lives in a very detrimental way. We either become narcissists ourselves, or we are prone to codependent relationships because of our own unhandled mommy issues. For so long, Lucifer has been our surrogate cosmic mother, our caregiver, albeit very criminally abusive. How do we do... Man, a lot of stuff you say is cool until you get on this shtick, dude, because you don't make any sense, man. Like... I get it, dude. It hurts when people treat you like crap. It hurts bad. There's some things that have happened in my life, brother, and I'm talking to Wes, the author of this book, that I would rather have had my arm broke, even cut off, than feel. But sometimes that doesn't mean that there is some kind of cosmic shit going on to keep you trapped on Earth, or that there's overlords and all this stuff. Because I know it just doesn't make sense to your heart, because you probably do have a good heart, how certain people can be so damn terrible to you. But they can be. It's all a matter of perspective, you know. You probably got beat up, cheated on, all kinds of stuff, just like a lot of us have. And what you don't realize is those people that are doing those things are justifying what they're doing because they're the victims too. There's no bigger victim than the narcissist. So really what we're doing here, instead of blaming overlords and robots and whatever the hell you're talking about, we're all trying to see who's the bigger victim, which is the opposite of love. However, what I'll do when I die is I'll definitely look for a grid. You got me convinced doing that. I'm convinced. What are you saying, Dennis? Trauma Bond, great name for a new tension band. Man. Just, man, I'm sorry, dude. You should have just found somebody that loved you for you, which some people do, and didn't. Even the people you find that love you are still going to treat you like shit every now and then. They're just not going to do that push and pull and narcissistic crap to you. But you have to have some sympathy for narcissists too. Most of the narcissists that I know, if you see what they are raised in, they had to raise themselves because they were brought up by selfish, narcissistic people. So they developed, I'm not making excuses for them, but they developed those traits so that they could take care of themselves. So all they do is manipulate because that's what they were raised in. You were probably raised by somebody that had a heart. Therefore, you learned how to be heartful. And you got hurt just like a lot of us do. Why am I having a conversation with this guy? He's not even on the damn show. And he just keeps bringing this up, though, doesn't he? You'll notice when you understand the mechanics behind narcissism and psychopathy that detaching and disconnection is possible. And the fear, trauma, and PTSD, which is always present after having been subjected to narcissism, will diminish, and your self-esteem and emotional and physical health will improve. One day you realize that there is nothing in this world that can keep you here, and it's no longer because you are tired, exhausted, codependent, and afraid. It's because now you have really seen the matrix for what it is. And nothing here is real and worth saving. That's such a sad thing to say, man. When you've come to the point where you're no longer afraid or your fear is at a minimum regarding leaving, you're emotionally very well prepared. You realize it's time to move on, and this was never your world. It comes as a natural choice, and it's a firm and stable one. The least you want to do when you reach that stage is to be recycled again. I don't know. I might want to be recycled again. Even if I do forget who I am. I mean, haven't you guys had some dreams that were pretty damn cool and you forgot about this world while you were in the dream? Haven't you ever woke up from a dream and you're like, damn, I want to go back to that dream for a little bit. This is sad to me, man, because like I wonder if this guy would have found somebody that really loved him. You know what I mean? Somebody that he could have went through ups and downs with, you know, had a good time, been intimate with, whatever, you know, that didn't just get totally jacked with and screwed with psychologically by somebody that was even more damaged. Would he have even wrote this book? I wonder about that, honestly, sometimes. And all of the people that talk about the prison planet, you know, kind of thing. Like, it's sad to me, honestly. Like, I know I'm reading way too deep into this book, man, because the book itself is entertaining, to say the least, but this is just sad, man. All right, so he's going to talk about, shit, it's almost time to go. So he's going to talk about praying. One more thing to bring up here is, look at that, there it so much is, I'm going to kill it. You see it? Bastard. All right. Let's read this part and then we'll get up out of here. One more thing to bring up here is something people might not always think about. Praying is also a way of agreeing with the matrix system, because when we pray, we usually pray to God. So now he's telling us not to pray. Jesus. The same God who probably ultimately created the problem, we now want him to fix for us through our prayers. This gives him a lot of our loose. Sometimes even if we don't believe in the false God and something detrimental happens in our lives, we might still start praying, God, please help me. I only do that like if I accidentally, you know, smoke too much weed and my heart's racing, or if I do something really stupid and I go to a party and accidentally take some cocaine and I shouldn't have and my heart's racing and I'm walking around going, God, please help me. Let me get out of this. If this, I swear to God, I'll never do it again. You know, that kind of thing. Lucifer never helped me out of those situations. This solution to our problems can always be found inside ourselves, and it's for us to figure out what the solution is. Sometimes it involves bringing in other people, and that's okay. The solution still comes from inside you. Even praying to the goddess is giving your power away if you want her to fix your problem. The prayer will most likely never even reach her, but stays with Inky. This doesn't mean you should not communicate with the goddess in your mind, but that is different from praying. We can, if we first establish the correct connection and bypass Inky, ask her for help in the form of encouragement. But I don't believe she appreciates if we pray to her as a goddess whom we expect to fix all our problems. I feel sad for this guy. Right. I don't think this guy's ever manifested any love in his life, dude. And if it did... And if he did, he probably fell in love with a narcissist or something, and it hurt him. We all got to experience that once or twice in our life, so we can be a little bit more mature about things. But it's sad to me. I really feel like if people found a healthy relationship in their life, like a healthy one, they wouldn't even write these books. I'm going to read this comic book, Dennis. I got to check it out and see how close he is with this thing. All right. Well, I'll be putting a poll out to see if you guys, when you die, are you going to go through the light tunnel, or are you going to look for the grid? Oh, the guy that wrote The Invisibles, that's one of the best comic books you'll ever read. His name is Grant Morrison. That's a fantastic comic book, by the way. I like it a lot. Tomorrow night, Jason Quitt will be on the program. I'm so looking forward to this, man. Every time Jason puts something out, he digs deeper into conscious exploration. Not only just that, but now he's digging into like hidden history and stuff, man. And the stuff that he's finding out, these patterns and things that he's finding in some Egyptian stuff is really... It's really dope. So you guys make sure that y'all come out tomorrow night. And then next week, we're going to have Mike Martin on. This guy's said that he's, I guess, found stargates through lucid dreaming. Later on, Ronnie Pontiac's going to come on. Stoked about it. Make sure if you can, please do so. We have to. We're still behind. We haven't caught up. We haven't been caught up for months. So we're always paying bills that are behind here on the Fringe FM. You can help by supporting, donating, grabbing anything from the shop. Donations help the most because they just do. If you grab something from the shop, you're going to get something out of the deal. And usually I set it up to where we make anywhere between $5 to $10 off of anything that you buy in the shop. Right. And, damn it, I forgot to show your picture tonight, Michael, but I got your pictures with your shirts and your turkey. I'll show that. Actually, I might show that as we roll out of here. And Michael's a cool cat. So is his wife. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow night. Good night. Sweet dreams.